Well, good Monday morning. I'm Wendy. You know, at the beginning of this year, I was sitting in church and our pastor actually encouraged each person to pick a word that they could really kind of connect to that year. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was pretty cheesy. He was saying big, lovely spiritual words like strength and joy and grace and courage and all of those things. And in my heart, I was just going, ugh, I don't want to do this. But let me back up. See, a couple months earlier, my husband had lost his job. And God had really been speaking to me through scripture to let me know that he was a God that was at work in the meanwhile. That no matter what was going on, he actually was doing something else. And it was during this time that my husband and I had to actually lean into God in ways that we had never had to lean into him before. We had no idea how we were going to pay our mortgage, our electric bill, much less how we were going to do the things that needed to be done at Christmas time with a family with 4 children still living at home. So this idea of God in the meanwhile was kind of a big deal. See, we each have 2 different types of ways that we see things. We see things both from the physical perspective and we see them in the spiritual perspective. But what God had really been speaking to me is that when you see something in the physical realm, Wendy, I actually am doing something in the spiritual realm that is so big. He actually showed me verse after verse where he had angel armies that were doing amazing things in the nation of Israel. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 18, it actually says that we need to buy medicine for our eyes so that we can really see. He was encouraging us to open our eyes to what he's doing, not just what we can see in the physical realm. In 2 Kings chapter 6, there's a story of Elisha being surrounded, and his servant wakes up and he freaks out and he says, "Oh my goodness, master, we are surrounded by a physical army." And Elisha asks God to open the servant's eyes, and when he does, what he sees all around are angel armies that are there to protect him. In 1 Chronicles chapter 14, verse 15, David is actually told as he's going into battle against the Philistines, God says to him, "Don't go into battle until you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the trees." In the tops of the trees. God was saying, I've got your back. What you can see is only what you can see, but I see something different. Open your eyes to something new. That was the meanwhile. That's what God was saying for me. Wendy, while you think something here is going on, meanwhile, I've got this going on. In my brain, I don't know if yours is like mine, but in my brain, every time I thought of it, I heard the Batman music, where it was the whole blah, blah, blah is going on here, but meanwhile, back in Gotham City. Well, the same is true with God. Here's what's going on in your life that you can see. But meanwhile, what is God doing? So back to my story with the pastor and telling me to pick a word and all of that stuff. So he's standing on the stage, and I kid you not, he's saying these big churchy words that I'm just going, ugh. And he uses the transition word, meanwhile. Who uses meanwhile when they talk, for real? He says meanwhile. And I realized, when did God just slapped you in the face? Because meanwhile, what he's doing is so much bigger than what you could possibly imagine. So this week, I encourage you, maybe you've been looking at something just through human perspective. Maybe there's some huge thing that you're supposed to be accomplishing, and it just feels hard. Use your eyes this week, but put medicine on them, the medicine that God gives you, to allow them to be opened, to see from his perspective. And then ask him, what are you doing in the meanwhile? And when you notice it, jump for joy, because it's pretty awesome. Have a great week.